Where'd you get the t-shirts?
I will remember Robbie as well.
Sorry? Oh, we are? All right, Jay. Oh.
Good evening and welcome to our Committee of the Whole meeting for Smith Falls Council. I'm Councillor Jay Brennan. Today is Monday, May 27th. I'll begin with the land acknowledgement this evening. On May 27th, we acknowledge that the secret land on which Smith Falls is now located has been the site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We're grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution to the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace, friendship, and be mindful of generations to come. And I'd also like to acknowledge today, this week, marks in 2021 the remains of 250 Indigenous children were discovered in Kamloops at the site of the Teague Club School. And so I think it's apt, and with committee's approval, we'll do a moment of silence in recognition of that sad discovery. Thank you for that. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order at 5:02, and I have a recommended motion for approval of the agenda May 27, 2024 Committee of the Whole. The meeting agenda be approved as circulated. Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Miller, all in favor. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest and/or conflict of interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none, recommended motion for approval of minutes. The minutes of the May 13th, 2024 and May 21st, 2024 Committee of the Whole meetings be approved as circulated. Moved by Councillor McKenna, seconded by Councillor Robinson, all in favor. We have no delegations, and I'll turn to CEO Morris. Welcome back. Any director's reports this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 3 this evening, and we will start with Ms. Crowder.
Council, I have a bunch of updates for council and the community. So I wanted to start with an update on the powwow. As council discussed at a previous meeting, the 2024 Save of the Drum powwow has been officially canceled for this year due to funding gaps, which had been traditionally filled through grants in the past. Grants continue to be fewer and far between. It's becoming increasingly competitive, often with larger tourism draws receiving funding. The town applied for 2 grants this year, the Celebrate grant, which was not approved, and we still have not heard back from the Canadian Heritage Trust grant that we applied for back in the fall time. Media and members of the public have reached out for comments and confirmation, and additional notice will be posted on social media and the website this week. Those invited performers and vendors had been previously advised of the cancellation previously. The Planning Committee, Mayor Panko, Councillor McKenna, and other key stakeholders will be meeting next week to discuss powwow structure and funding options for moving forward in an effort to bring back powwow in 2025 and beyond. The other one I have is Community Awards. Last Thursday, the community gathered at Station Theatre to recognize outstanding individuals in our community for the 2023 Community Awards. Congratulations to Bud Fawcett, Alexandra Lannon, Alex Morana, Miley Vano, and Dorothy Hudson on their awards, as well as all of those who were nominated. And special thank you to our guest speakers, Nancy Stevens, founder of Help Kenya, as well as Ryan Collins, who showed us the true impact and importance of volunteerism and community spirit. Also, thank you to Carrie Barlow and our students for all their hard work in planning the event. Last week, we also last weekend, we saw 3 community events: Porch Fest, the Kids Fishing Tournament, and Walk for Alzheimer's. June will also be an exciting events month. Kicking off the month this Saturday, June 1st, will be the Pull the Pumper event at the Community Center, which is being put on by the Fire Association and the Fire Department. Heritage House is also putting on a Beatles Mania event and the opening of the new exhibit, which showcases memorabilia from the Beatles era and celebrating 60 years of the first press of the Smith Falls RCA records of the Beatles here in town. June 7th is the Farmers Market, the opening of the Farmers Market at the Falls, and every Friday from 7 p.m. until Thanksgiving. June 15th is the 2nd annual Downtown Business Association Night Market, which is on Main Street, as well as Paddle Fest, which will be happening at Lower Beach Park. So there's a lot happening. Next is Citizen of the Year. So I just wanted to remind everyone that next Monday, June 3rd, is our annual Citizen of the Year awards, and it will be held at the Smith Falls Golf and Country Club starting at 6:30. This year's event is hosted by the Smith Falls Kinsman Club in partnership with the town. Nominations are now closed and the committee has chosen a winner. Tickets are still available for the event, and if you'd like to purchase some, they can be purchased by contacting the Kinsman Club. Staff are also working on planning for this year's Canada Day at Lower Beach Park. The town is currently seeking vendors for the market and calls will be put out. If local businesses or organizations are interested in the booth, they can reach out to the Economic Development and Tourism Office for more information and to register. And my last update, I apologize that they're long ones. Over the last few months, the town has been working in partnership with local business organizations, including the Chamber of Commerce, the DBA, the Small Business Advisory Center, On Track and Valley Heartland CFDC for a BRE survey. The deadline to complete surveys is fast approaching, so we're encouraging all businesses to take part in the survey if they haven't already. This is the businesses' community's opportunity to provide feedback to the town related to business supports and services, and this survey will help inform the upcoming investment attraction and BRE strategic plan. Staff are in the process of developing that RFP and hope to have it out by the end of June. So I'm happy to answer any
Thank you,
questions.
Lois. Any questions, comments from council? Seeing none, thank you very much for that update.
Next, we have Mr. Dowder, our Director of Corporate Services and Treasurer.
Good evening. Through the chair, I just wanted to give council an update on our Ontario Regulation 588-17, which is the asset management plan. We have the deadline of the updated non-core assets for July 1st, 2024. As we're unfolding the work, there's a little bit more information that was required, so a little bit more research and a little bit more time. So we're looking at coming at July 22nd with the updated asset management plan, which is about 3 weeks later than the ministry hopes or suggested to be able to put that into place. So I've reached out to our Ministry of Housing rep and let them know that we're going to be delayed by just a few weeks, but that we will have it done before the end of July happens. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Councilman McCaffrey?
Yeah, thank you. I look forward to the report whenever it gets here. Is it something that we receive or do we have to approve it?
Council has to approve it. Once council approves it, then we take off the draft and then we put it on the website. So it's not like a funding report where you send it into a body. We just have to upload it onto our website. And the next time we apply for a grant, we provide the link to that grant for our asset management plan. And that's basically how it's used. There's not anybody from the ministry at this point that kind of goes to the websites and make sure they're uploaded. But yeah, we're not uploading it to the ministry. We just put it on the website.
And good. This is the new and improved asset management plan, a more robust plan than traditionally, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what it is, the requirement in 2022 was to take our core assets, our underground infrastructure, and put some condition, current condition on it. 2024 is take our non-core, everything above the ground, again, put our current condition on it and what are our approaches, how we manage it currently. And then 2025 is to take both sections, update it, and say what's our projected condition analysis and how are we going to fund our approach to how we're going to be looking after our assets And so 2025 will be that. That's the bigger piece, and that'll be the final hurrah. And then there will be an update required every 5 years after that.
Thank you.
Any more questions? No? And how we're gonna fund it, but how they're gonna help us fund it. That's my other point. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Next.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, the next one is a discussion about the Association of Municipalities in Ontario Conference. It's coming up in August 18th to the 21st in Ottawa. And the AMO, the ministry through AMO are now accepting delegation requests, ministerial delegation requests. The deadline to submit them is approaching rapidly. In fact, it's next Friday, June 7th. So we have a limited amount of time, but we do have time to prepare any requests that council may want to bring forward. So I'm offering that as a discussion point this evening. And Mr. Chair, we can put it as a priority item if you wish, or we can talk about it now, your call.
I think now's as good time as any.
Okay.
So, I have certainly a suggestion, but I'll look to my colleagues for. That's for Ken.
Mr. Chair, were we not tracking some of these thoughts when, like, as the last few months, we said, well, that would be that potential though, I can't remember. Is that right? I'm drawing a blank right now.
Okay. So we can talk about it later. I could put it on as an agenda item if you want to think about it during the meeting. I'll put it on as 10.5 then.
Sounds good.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay. So, I think I'm going to look to the mayor to say a few words tonight before we get going.
Sure. Councilor Gordon, you want to stand up with me? Because we're staying out tonight. And we're proud to stay with Robbie Hall. This is with Prader-Willi syndrome. Robbie's obviously a very fine young man. May is Prader-Willi Syndrome Awareness Month. And I just want to give a little bit of recognition for Robbie. His father, Greg, is here tonight. We appreciate you being here and with us tonight. And we all stand with Robbie, fight with Robbie. And I wish the best of Robbie, who's obviously incredible young man. He was our Voluntary Appreciation event. He was last year's recipient of the Charles Gahuli Award for all the good he does in our community. And so we know Robbie's not with us tonight, but I'm sure Greg will pass on that we're
Here. Thank you for that. So that's it for director's reports. We have no municipal consent reports, no in camera. We'll go right to priority reports and a very interesting report from Director Crowder on our visitor survey.
Thank you again. So the report is to provide council and the community with the results of the 2023 Visitor Information and Collection Program. This is a 3-year initiative. 2024 will be our 3rd initiative. And what it does is it collects information and data and statistics for people visiting our community to help us better understand where our tourism information gaps and asset development gaps are, as well as how we can better market to the community. So some key points that came in this year is we received roughly the same amount of responses in 2022 as we did this year. 76% of visitors travel to Smith Falls primarily as their destination. Most respondents are coming in the summer, which I think we know, and the off-season is really the challenge and where we need to develop more assets. Most respondents are coming for shopping and visiting family and friends. Most of them are short day trippers. We're not having a lot of overnight stays, so again, that's an area that we need to look to improve on as we move forward. Total combined spending by the survey respondents this year was approximately $100,000, with the average visit and trip being $370 per trip for group spending. There's a lot of continued similarities in the gaps or tourism products that were identified over the last 2 years, which is increasing cultural density and experiences, retail products, extending store hours in the downtown, especially in the evening, and visitors this year, we're looking for more festivals and events, so that's something that staff are going to be working on moving forward. So I'm happy to take any questions on the report itself.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Councilor McKenna?
Thanks for the interesting report. What's that difference between a day tripper and somebody from Toledo coming in to do their shopping here for the day, going out for dinner and getting caught up in the survey? Because I see them as a shopper rather than a tourist, but how do you differentiate them?
So anyone really coming to our community that doesn't live, work, or own property would be considered a visitor. If you look at from a provincial standpoint, usually it's within 40 kilometers is a visitor. So we still count them as being a visitor to community because they're not living here. They're coming into our community to spend their money and to go to events and experience.
So more than 40 then they become a tourist?
Yeah. 40 beyond our boundaries would be considered, that's by the provincial standpoint, but most of our visitors are regional, so we don't want to discount them as well.
No. Okay, good, thanks.
Councilor Robinson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What happens with the comments that they make? Is that directed to various departments? Like if, for example, I'm going to use the goose poop as an example. They thought that should get cleaned up in the parks. And since the geese are back again this year and it's starting already, I was just wondering, like, did that get relayed to the correct department?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so any of the specific comments we do circulate. This report also goes out to all of our community members and tourism stakeholders in the community as well to help them identify who our visitors are and how they can capitalize on the information that's in the report. So where they're marketing to or, different products that tourists might be looking for.
Thank you.
Councilor McGuire?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering, is the 2024 survey open yet, or when does it come out?
2024 is open. It's a year-round survey.
Good.
So we don't do heavy promoting during the beginning of the year, but the cards are still in stores and in restaurants and within our accommodators. So we're starting to market now that visitor season is here. We just printed the new cards and we're working on disseminating them through the community as well.
Thanks. And through the chair, follow up. How do we get those cards on boats or out to boaters? Because I was surprised how small. That's a perspective I'd like to see more in next year's survey, but it doesn't seem like that message is getting through to that demographic.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we work with the chamber. So the cards are at the visitor center. They are given to all the boaters. The boat has them as well. We give them to all of our accommodators because those are where really the true visitors are coming, as well as our restaurants and our retail stores. We don't do a lot of online marketing of the visitor survey because often people will just take the survey to try and win, even though they're not necessarily coming to the community. So that's why we rely on getting the cards in the community and having our visitors take it when they get here.
Thanks.
You any other questions? I'll just make it is really a good report, and at 260 or something, that's not a bad. I'd like to see that a lot higher though, and you mentioned there's still opportunity for us to do more. In here, and maybe I missed it, but when they talk about attractions, events, you have like a rating, like Railway Museum, Heritage, how many times those particular things, Station Theatre, how many times those things are mentioned?
We do. We ask them specifically what event they attended or what attraction they attended. Not all respondents will put that information, but it is in the survey.
Okay, thanks.
We are capturing that.
Good. Okay, thank you. No more questions. Thanks for that.
You're welcome. And I just wanted to let council know as well that we're working with Lanark County Tourism this year. They're also doing a survey within the county, and we provide them with this information. So we'll be able to compare next year, hopefully, to this year on a county level, what those visitors are throughout the county and how we can look to leverage their data and what's happening in other communities here in the town.
Sounds good. Thank you. Okay. Treasurer Delver with our projected debt levels report.
Thank you. Through the chair, this report is basically to build on the annual repayment limit report that came earlier in the month, and to provide some future projections. At the time, I stated that I just need a little bit more time to go back and look at our current debt structure and just look at when some of those pieces were coming to maturity, and in order to provide a better long-term outlook. So on page 1. And I won't go into too much of the details because a lot of it is a repeat from what that report is. But I've updated the table that was presented from Stephen Dickey as a part of the budget, 2024 budget, which I believe was also part of the original the budget for the project itself, and updated 23 to project to look at what the actuals were in 23 and then project how that would affect and change 24 through 26. So as you can see, for the tower cost, it's still 9.8 million. Spread out over the 3 years, with the project slated to be completed by the end of 2025, and the trunk main cost of $15 million starting up in 2024 and going through to the end of 2026. Within that, the original budget was just over $5 million for the tower, and then just under $13 million for the trunk main cost. And so I'm still using that model as far as being able to come back and show council what that means to our debt structure on our annual repayment limit. Second page talks about current interest rates. So the analysis is really looking strictly at using Infrastructure Ontario at this point. So as not to bring, I didn't want to bring pages and pages of data and information back, but just kind of pick one scenario and say, let's look at Infrastructure Ontario and how they're set up, and then let's look at how that affects us with their current rate. So that is based on the current rate, and as council is very much aware, the rates are quite high right now, and economists are projecting them to go down approximately 1% by the end of 2024, and then further in the future. So the way that the Infrastructure Ontario works with a construction loan is, first of all, you apply for a loan, and it is a loan during the phase of construction up until 4 months after the substantial completion is achieved by and signed off by the engineers. At this point, construction loans are 5.47%, and the actual payment requirement during construction is the interest portion of that structure. And then at that point, if it's turned into a debenture, that the principal basically doesn't change. So we're just, again, during construction, we're just paying off the interest. At that point, in that 4 months, that gives time to the town to either venture into a debenture with Infrastructure Ontario, or if we're able to find something that's a little more competitive in the free market, then we can go that route and then just pay the debt off, and then enter into a new agreement with another facility. Table 2 just shows kind of how that would work as far as the timing based on the budget. So the construction loan of 5.47% in 2024 for the water tower into 25, and then in this case, just looking at what that means to debenture it currently at 4.89% for a 30-year debenture. And again, that's at today's current rates. So that is very sensitive to what the market trend predictions are going to be in the future. So, I mean, cutting to the end, that shows that with our internal ceiling of the 2 million that started up, I believe, in 2015, and increases by 2% per year. And 2024, that means we have the availability with our own policy of 2,450,000 of annual repayment limit, which we're well within. Further on, you can see in 2027, there's a couple of negative numbers there, and that means at the current rate, with this current structure, we would go over our internal ceiling by about $240,000 in 2027, and then back down to about $187,000 in 2028. Again, that's at today's market rates, with the predictions of that possible 1% decrease. That would certainly change the landscape of the picture. And those would be fairly accurate as far as what our current structure is. I don't believe there's anything that's coming to maturity before 2031. So we would be close to that upper limit, but at 2031, some of those current debts that we have they begin to drop off. So then we start to see some more room after 2031. So we have a temporary window of a few years where we'll see kind of being close to what our internal debt limit is, and then we'll see a tapering off after that, because we have quite a few debts coming to maturity after that. If there's any questions.
Any questions, comments? Mayor Tango?
Thanks, Director Dauber. It was great information. The first part I think is positive. I mean, the debt's down to 8 million over the last 10 years. And so we knew we'd have major projects coming up. We've been pretty dedicated to trying to do our capital work without taking on more debt. And so that debt's come down. But worst case scenario is that debt would then essentially double, more than double, if we're not successful in obtaining more federal provincial funding for the water tower and Trunk Lake project. So as much as it seems like it's a huge number, the eventual debt servicing on that would work out to be about a 6% tax increase from where we are today, if we're adding about $1.1 million roughly to debt servicing. So it's huge, but again, I think we've got an opportunity for funding through one grant application's in there now. Hopefully we'll look after a sizable amount of the cost. But regardless, I think what we've got here is probably the worst case scenario. If we don't get any funding, interest rates stay high, and it actually means about a 6% increase in taxes from where we are today, simply to cover that. But overall, important information. And I guess when it also comes to us, if we do advocacy with the province on funding programs, we've got a good picture painted for us to illustrate the impact it has on our community.
Go ahead.
Thank you through the chair. If I could just reply to that, that's a great point that I didn't bring up, is that this also doesn't accommodate the fact of any grants that we may be able to participate in. We're in a good position for grants because we're shovel ready. We've got the detailed designs, we've got the approvals, we're ready to go. So we're in a very good position if the grants do become available. Yeah.
So no major alarm bells yet. Thank you.
Thanks.
Councilor Martin?
No, it's great, and I like the multi-year forecasting, and more we can see that with all of our, like the project, the asset management plan is going to be very helpful for that, to point out over the next 20 years what we're going to need to spend. And you may not know, but Sierra Morris, we're locked on those prices that for those bids on the water tower and the in-ground work. Are they at risk of going above what prices we have here?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the water tower purchase is fixed. That was a tender competitive process. The trunk main work has yet to be done. But hopefully it will be fixed soon.
Yeah, this is worst case. If that would come in, if the in-ground work was way over, then that would be another worst case.
Be a good case if it came under.
Yeah. And rates dropped at the same time.
Councilor Barr?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks a lot, Paul. Out of the 15.1 million of long-term debt right now, do you know what the breakdown of that is? What it's owed towards?
I do have that information, but I don't have it handy. I can come back to council with that, with a breakdown, very specific if council wishes.
Cool. Yeah, I'd love to see just what our terms are, what the rates are, because that would be an extra level of risk in this too, right? As stuff comes due. So.
Yeah, through the chair, that's a part of the work that's been going into the asset management plan, is to be able to identify that loan structure. So as I'm just finishing that work up, I can certainly bring that portion of the asset management plan preemptively before it's passed to council.
Awesome.
Councilor Barr, are you talking about like how much more do we owe on the arena?
Yeah, like I know we just re-signed that arena loan, but I don't have a good idea of what the remaining of that 15 million is going towards.
Maybe if you could circulate that breakdown of the major loans we've got. It's always good to look at. Any other questions, comments? I'll just thank you for that, and just to echo the mayor, I hope it is worst case scenario, because you know, there's other things we're we're gonna wanna do. And, you know, we're gonna do a study on the youth arena. We need some sort of indoor sports facility, I believe. And the things are gonna come up, so, I'm really surprised, and I have been before, about what the provincial level top up is, because it's right now it's at like almost $5 million in debt servicing. We're imposed under 2 or 2 something, and we're under 2 now. So those years of, you know, between 27 and 28, we're just above what we're telling ourselves we can't do. So when you talk about, and the mayor mentioned water treatment plant, the arena, 2/3 of the funding came from up here. In this case, as I said before, we got $3 million out of 25. So that's not to preempt the later discussion about, you know, that's got to be a delegation. And I know that we're not alone, especially in Eastern Ontario. They're like down around Belleville, like there's small municipalities. Their bridges are falling apart, and they have no money with small populations too. So it's great information. I really appreciate the update, and just to keep it top of mind where we're at. But I think we're gonna have some challenges if we don't get some help. So thanks for the report. Okay. 10.3 permitting backyard candy. That's what Chief Juicebro, CO Morris is going to take over here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the chief is unable to be here this evening, so I will walk you through the report that he has prepared. The genesis of this report was occurred back in April when Mr. Radford had presented to committee as a delegation and provided some very insightful and educational facts about backyard hens. So the request or the direction from committee at the time was to bring back more information. So that's what has been done here. The chief has outlined a few of the benefits and some of the considerations, particularly as it relates to our animal control bylaw and our zoning bylaw. You might ask, what does the zoning bylaw have to do with backyard hens? Well, there's a section in our zoning bylaw that regulates the type of pet that someone can harbor in their house. And chickens are excluded. They're not considered pets within the definition of our bylaw. So that simply needs to be changed if you want to go down the road of allowing or permitting backyard hens. That would keep it consistent with our animal control bylaw, which would also have to change. So, although there are processes, one is subject to a public meeting and public input, the animal control bylaw is not. That's simply a process, nothing insurmountable about it, but it is something to consider. So, as well, the chief had identified a few other things, considerations I would call them. It seems there are limited veterinarian services in town for that type of animal. There is no livestock disposal facility in town. Again, something to consider. We would need to look at our bylaw enforcement capacity if this were to happen. So we would have a closer look at it if that is the direction the council wants to go. And of course, we need to understand what the potential revenues would be and any additional costs that would be associated. The suggestion at the delegation was to cut the fee that Carleton Place charges in half. I think they charge an initial fee of $100 and an annual renewal fee of $30. So if that's the route you wish to go, we would come back with recommendations around some degree of cost recovery. My personal belief is something like this should not be fully subsidized by the taxpayers. So we would want to look, or my suggestion would we would want to look at mechanisms for cost recovery for So, another piece of information that the chief unearthed was there was a pilot project in Toronto. It appears that pilot has been suspended. There are a couple of reasons for that. There's a link in the report you can have a look at. There was some concern in the U.S. about bird flu or avian flu. Haven't seen any Canadian reports necessarily about that, but it's there for your information. So, all that said, there are two paths to take from today's discussion. We can either pursue the both zoning bylaw amendments, if that's the route you wish to go. That's subject to a public meeting. And then we would come back with a more refined estimation of costs and revenues for your consideration. So at that point, perhaps I'll pause and be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councillor Miller?
Thank you. Thank you for your report, for Fire Chief Sparrow's report. And I appreciated the listed considerations. I am in support of option 1, so I would like to go forward and review the bylaws and get public opinion. And I see Mr. Radford in the audience today. Thank you for being here. And I might suggest that since he offered to assist us in the rollout of the policy, perhaps we could wrangle him into continuing his assistance. And I didn't notice any reference to roosters in the policy, and I may have missed that, but I would ask that we not permit roosters. And that's all my comments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barr?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, CO Morris. I'm disappointed that our zoning bylaw is taking activities into account. I never, you read something a few times, but I've never read it with that angle. And I was surprised that was in there because usually it's about uses, right? And there's nothing about the use with a chicken coop that changes, it's not like an additional unit or density or anything from that realm. So I was surprised to see that, and I'm hoping that there might be a way that we can, even though it's in the zoning bylaw, if we did something under a trial basis that, okay, we're not going to enforce that part of the bylaw, if there's some kind of way to work around it to make this move faster while the other stuff's moving forward at the same time. I'm not really swung by the negatives in the report, but I don't think when it comes to cost recovery conversation, I don't think that the hens should be held to a different level than pets. When we look at pets, we're not doing cost recovery or any kind of mandatory cost recovery with pets. We're not doing any mandatory inspections or mandatory licensing with pets. And as we saw from Mr. Radford's presentation, that an average dog creates a lot more waste per year than a chicken would. So I think for a matter of fairness, we need to apply the same lens to, just because this is a new idea doesn't mean it needs new rules than our existing systems. And I think the complaint-driven system that we have now is what's working, and we're not having a conversation to change it for pets, so why not apply it here? So all that to say, yeah, I support option 1, and I just think it's faster we can do this, the better. So if there's a way around the zoning bylaw in the meantime, I would support doing that.
Councillor, Mayor Pancho had his hand up a minute ago.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the comments, and I guess maybe it was our senior planner here, Director of Adult Services, regarding, is there simply an exemption to the zoning bylaw that would enable this as a permitted use in certain zones? I don't know the process. Maybe you'll be able to answer that question. But other than that, I too am not concerned about some of the risks I think that have been identified. A lot of this we do involve some degree of risk, and your comments regarding pets is very valid. I think a minor cost to get set up is certainly warranted. There has to be some inspections. Staff have to go there, ensure that the setbacks are appropriate, the coop is appropriate. I think it would minimize potential issues in the future. But overall, I support option 1, and from a timing standpoint, I don't want to rush it through, but if there's methods that we can utilize that would enable this, as long as the committee council agrees, then I prefer we take a more streamlined approach if that's possible.
Thank you. Councillor McCann?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm interested in the public consultation, quite keen to hear back. And if we started with that, and still look at some zoning exemptions. I also had in my mind, and I think it was suggested in the presentation, that, you know, for the first year, whenever we started, if we started, this year or next, we start with just 100, you know, or cap it, just to see how it goes and get a better sense of costs and some of the other aspects of it. So I'm keen to see option one. I will say that our Climate Action Work Group did discuss this a little bit, and they talked about food scraps and yard waste and compost. This is an excellent way to, it does reduce the impact of, in a small way, but it is something, rather than compost only in your backyard, this using waste this way produces less greenhouse gases, so just another thought afterwards. And the other, on the climate change work group, talked about the people are consuming their own eggs. They're not trucking them in. So again, another reduction in potentially on greenhouse gases. So I think there's lots of positives here. I would like to think we could try small, but I'm really keen to hear what the residents of Smith Falls have to say.
Thank you for that, Councillor Quinn.
Thank you. I guess I have to be the odd man out here, but no, I would though like what Peter is saying, what Councillor McKenna is saying, go out to the public, hear what the public has to say. I have no problem with that at all. I think we need to listen to the public more. So that's a great suggestion. But to raise some chickens in your backyard for eggs, I lived on a farm where we had chickens, we had meat birds, and we had eggs. That was a business that my parents ran, and I was there, and I know how much work it took. And it's not inexpensive. You have to have a chicken coop, you have to have it well protected, you have to keep them safe. That all comes at a cost. You also have to have something heated in the winter time so they don't freeze. And then we look at the overall picture. It's going to take more bylaw, so there's a cost to the town. And chickens usually lay eggs, I believe, for 2 years, and then they're finished. Maybe 3 if you're lucky. So what happens to the chickens then? Where do the chickens go? There's no place in town to take them to be slaughtered, and so how do we handle that kind of a situation? And I will have you know, and I know I'll get all kinds of comments about this, but I did a CBC interview today about feral cats in the town of Smith Falls. I know you're going to say it can't compare, but last year we spent $14,000 sending cats to laws. $14,000, and we have not cleaned up the cats. Who created that problem? Humans have. Humans are the ones that have to fix the problem. So I think looking at putting chickens out there, I love fresh eggs. I get my eggs from a farmer right here. He does the work, I just pay for it and enjoy the fresh eggs. I just really think that it could be very expensive. I really think that it could become an issue. And I think people, if they're looking to produce food, should be looking at having a garden. And I know a lot of people don't have much land, so, you know, some raised garden beds or pots or whatever, grow some food that way. So anyways, I'm sorry, but I am going with option 2. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else? Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I'm sort of torn on this. I like the idea of growing, you know, or producing your own eggs. Like I like that. I would be willing to possibly support a pilot program, providing it was at the end of a public consultation to see what the public wanted. And I guess that's about all I got to say about it. I'd like to get the view of the majority of the public before I actually make a decision on that. But I'd be willing to try a pilot project for a couple of years, probably. That'd be a good amount of time. But as it just sits now, I just can't support it yet until we get a public consultation.
So thank you for that. And I think that's part of option one. So, and I don't want to go around a bylaw amendment because that part of that is the public in-person and online survey to talk about what people in town think of us. And I think the other part is, and some of the chief's concerns I agree with. And he's not saying we may or may not have another bylaw, but we will. So there's the cost part of it as well. So I'll agree to option one, but that doesn't mean that I'm supporting backyard chickens at this point. So I think staff has direction for option one, and we're going to be talking about this further. I guess the other question I had to, maybe I'll throw that out, because the last time this came up in 2018, the question was raised with the health unit, and they did respond. I didn't see a response from the health unit other than, a report from CNN about FDA and CDC, which are the US, but I'd like to have weigh in from the health unit as well. But option one is it? Okay. Yeah, CEO Morse.
Yeah, thank you. So a couple of members of council talked about a pilot project. Is there consensus to proceed with option one on the basis of a pilot?
I was waiting after the public consultation. I said, if we roll it out, it doesn't mean, I just thought that might mitigate some of the chief's concerns. Doesn't mean we're gonna go a free-for-all. If and when council adopted this, one option could be a pilot. That, I wasn't suggesting, that was my opinion.
And I agree with you, that's what I heard too.
Yeah.
That we had the public, and then once we talk about it and say, okay, we're going to go forward, it's pilot.
It could
It's
be
just
that.
what they did in Toronto, right? I believe that was a pilot that was eventually canceled. Yeah, so it was a pilot that was canceled, so we still would be a pilot even after all this stuff. Yeah, that's Councilor Martin.
So what kind of timeline are we looking at to get this public consultation accomplished? Like in my head, as much as we can consult and as much as we can ask people about it, the data of actually having it exist is going to be a lot more useful. So the more we push the pilot down the road to start, the more we just delay this happening.
The report states 2 or 3 months, which I'm fine with.
That's for the zoning bylaw amendment though,
Yeah,
right?
well, that's public consultation. Right?
But we don't want to necessarily amend the zoning bylaw for a pilot. Like that's the question that's still unanswered, right?
That's a question for Carl, I think. I don't see why you can't. Yeah. Sorry to put you on the spot there, Carl. Our planner, Carl, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think we're dealing with a couple of different bylaws, both of which have different processes for amendments. So we certainly don't want a situation where we have a zoning bylaw that conflicts with an animal control bylaw. Ideally, the bylaws align. So I think there's a number of different ways in which we can proceed. We have a mandatory statutory public process for a zoning amendment that includes a public meeting that's open to the public, notice is given, but we're not limited to that. We can do more if we amend the animal control bylaw. We can certainly engage in a more targeted or granular consultation with the public. So I think certainly staff will discuss how we want to stage these. I think there's a couple of different approaches. Perhaps if I may make a suggestion, the first question that we look at is, firstly, are we interested in allowing backyard chickens according to some rules? And if so, then perhaps that's when we look at the bylaw amendments and engage in that public process. And I think at that point, then perhaps we'll have determined whether we want to proceed by way of pilot or or some way. The zoning bylaw can be very simple. I think Councillor McGuire was, his point was very fair in that typically a zoning bylaw regulates land use, not activity. Backyard keeping of chickens in a residential backyard seems more akin to an activity on a residential lot. And in an animal control bylaw, that gives us a little bit more leeway in terms of defining what we want to regulate. Section 34 of the Planning Act is fairly strict on what's a zoning matter and what's not a zoning matter. So perhaps we have more regulatory leeway and enforcement leeway if the primary mechanism for regulating backyard chickens is through the animal control bylaw. And then if that's the case, then the zoning can simply be amended to state that something along the lines of household pets with the exclusion of with the exclusion of hens according to such and such a bylaw, and just create that link. We don't want to necessarily be in the realm of having to, one bylaw gets tweaked and the other one has to chase it. So I think those procedural elements staff will work on, but I think in terms of the zoning, I think that the change can be fairly simple. I think the first question would be, do we want to make that change?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Robinson?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I would like to hear what the people of Smiths Falls want us to do before we go ahead and do it. There's a perception out there that we don't listen to them in the first place, so I would like to give them an opportunity to make their thoughts known before we actually go into the process of changing anything. That would be my thought. And if it's only going to be a couple or 3 months, and what I've learned is in the process of municipal government, 2 to 3 months is very fast. So I don't think that's a problem. So that's what I'd like to see done.
So what I'm hearing is it would probably be good housekeeping to take the animal control sections out of our zoning bylaw and have them governed by the animal control bylaw. That would require the public consultation to check both boxes off, and then we're just not in a situation where we've taken specifically backyard hens out of the zoning bylaw. If for whatever reason the pilot didn't go ahead, then we have to do another zoning bylaw amendment. It sounds like the zoning bylaw amendment would be good housekeeping, so why don't we go ahead with that? And if we could get anything else moving faster, great. But
well, I'll just read option 1 to you again, because I think it's what you said. Council directs staff to prepare a zoning bylaw amendment, conduct public consultation, including an in-person and online survey to determine the level of interest and acceptance of the proposed program before council makes its final decision. Further, staff will provide financial estimates to administer the program and associated costs for staffing and the inspection and maintenance of the program. That's all the information I think too. So that's option 1, right?
yeah, I'm just saying for the zoning bylaw amendment, let's not look at this with a backyard hens lens. Let's look at this in an activities versus use lens. So our zoning bylaw is a stronger zoning bylaw at the end of it.
I'm going to go with option 1. So anybody, I really don't understand what you're saying. Councilor Kent?
Thank you, Mr. I think I understand what you're saying. I think staff will come back and say, here's a couple of options to change the zoning bylaw. One could be Councilor McGuire suggesting, another could be change it to align with whatever it is. It doesn't, we aren't writing it tonight, so.
No, exactly. So, do you think staff have enough information with all that mud?
We do, yes.
Okay.
We'll scratch through it. Come up with some.
That is, but. Couldn't wait these times.
Yeah.
A moment just to address this slightly.
I'm sorry?
I'm on the inclusion committee, so I hear you talking about public consultation. You make sure it's inclusive, please.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so I'll move along here. And we just got warmed up, Carol, so you gotta tell us about Bill 185.
Good evening, committee. This evening I'm advising Council of some proposed changes to development-related legislation. As Council is aware, the last few years have been very busy on the legislative front as the province has brought forward a number of changes to the Planning Act and other legislation, trying to find the right spot to be in as it relates to enabling development and housing development specifically. Over the last few years, I brought several update reports to Council. Taken broadly, what the legislation tries to do is move in the direction of altering the planning tools we have at our disposal or impact the revenue generating ability the municipality has with the objective of facilitating development. Council is keenly aware of the challenges and pressures we face in our own community in ensuring that housing supply is available and also accessible to those who need it. Recognizing, of course, that the pressure points constraining housing development is often beyond the control of the municipality or any level of government alone. Bill 185, titled Cutting Red Tape to Build More Homes Act, is currently in second reading at Queen's Park, and it carries forward some more amendments to the Planning Act, Municipal Act, and other legislation. It also comes accompanied by a new draft provincial planning statement, which is the new name for the provincial policy statement that we know and is amended from time to time. And I think it's very fair to say that some of the changes proposed in this legislation are less vast in scope than what we've seen in the past. And this report shares with Council some of the key highlights that apply to Smith Falls and our own operations. One interesting change relates to settlement area boundary expansions. Traditionally, a municipality would define an urban settlement area boundary in its official plan, and the urban settlement area boundaries would only be altered or expanded at the time of a comprehensive review, which is a process by which land needs are identified for the municipality as a whole and new settlement boundaries identified looking at options and considerations holistically across the board. Last year, the draft PPS removed the need for a comprehensive review and opened the door to these happening essentially any time upon application. And Bill 185 proposes to now allow applicants to appeal to the LPAT, Local Planning Appeals Tribunal, if council refuses to alter or expand these boundaries. If these changes go forward, if approved, it looks to potentially transfer some of the responsibility for long-range growth planning from local council to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Bill 185 does, however, propose to limit appeal rights on other zoning amendments and official plan amendments to only designated persons, including agencies, utilities, and applicants, but excluding third parties such as neighbors. This appeal limitation has previously applied to plans of subdivision, so it's proposed to extend to more types of planning applications. The push to this change appears to be responsive to many situations in other communities where planning appeals have ground development applications, including supported applications, to a halt, even if the appeals were ultimately found to have no land use merit. My own inclination is that an efficient and well-resourced appeals process is an integral part of the credible planning process. And one other consequence may simply be that well-resourced appellants may simply attempt to take planning disputes to the court system, such as if there's a glitch in the notification, or pursue their recourse that way, which of course may not result in faster outcomes. Time will of course tell. Bill 185 does propose a couple of other procedural changes. One is the removal of the requirement to pre-consult on an application. A pre-consultation is a semi-formal milestone early in a planning process where developers and their agents meet with town staff in applicable departments and outside agencies such as the RBCA, discuss the proposal and verify application requirements, basically giving direction as to what's required to support a complete application. Done well, we find the pre-consultation is in the interest of the applicant, as that provides the clarity of expectations, which hopefully cuts down on the revisions to the number of plans or even avoiding work that's not necessary. While pre-consultations will no longer be mandatory in planning applications, we will continue to strongly encourage them, and development staff are always open to explore ways in which we can improve the effectiveness and efficiency of these processes. One recent change the province proposes to actually roll back is the requirement that we refund planning application fees on applications where decisions aren't made within a specified period of time. Previous discussion around this table noted that the refund would apply no matter the cause or circumstances of any delay. In practice, what's happened across the board in development departments across the province is that municipalities tended to front-load application requirements in order to get as much in as possible before an application was deemed complete and the clock started ticking, which resulted in earlier conflicts, bottlenecks, and an unclear benefit to the developer. So this would sort of roll that back to where we were before. Bill 185 proposes to remove a number of building and land use typologies from the scope of municipal planning approval, including colleges, universities, hospitals, and long-term care homes. The purpose of that is to reduce procedural duplication and avoid delays in the event of a land use conflict that slow down construction. Also, it is proposed that many additional residential unit characteristics be enshrined and removed from zoning as well, which is a response to what's been observed in some communities where zoning rules allow the ARUs as required by the province, but site-specific restrictions are so prohibitive as to essentially ban them, thereby going around the intent of the legislation. These changes reflect the ability of the minister to make the regulations. However, until we see the regulations, we can't know for sure what that means or the impact. A couple of other helpful changes are proposed. One is to allow us to give statutory notice for planning applications on our website if the community isn't served by a print newspaper. This is the change that council had asked for, as well as councils in many other small communities, and it's a good one. The bill also proposes a number of changes under the succinct heading of use it or lose it, meaning that we'll have additional tools available that would encourage developers to build the developments that they've been approved for. Some of which we already do, such as lapsing date on subdivisions or site plan applications, and some of which give us a new ability to reallocate servicing capacity should we find ourselves in the need to allocate limited capacity to specific developments. We haven't yet had to do that. That may of course change in the future. We don't know at this point. The legislation also proposes to undo some previous development charge related legislation that would now better position the municipality to undertake growth-related infrastructure work covered under development charges bylaw, including re-allowing the DC background study to be covered by the development charges, and also removing the mandatory phase-in that automatically established discounts on new development charges over a 4-year period, going back to 100%. At the same time, a new draft provincial planning statement was released. Council will recall last year a series of fairly significant changes were proposed, which were assessed by staff and council. I won't dwell too much on the PPS, since the 2024 changes were fairly minor compared to what was in 2023. I think natural heritage provisions have been reintroduced. Affordable housing definition has been reestablished. Stronger language regarding the evaluation criteria for boundary adjustments has been included. Many of these were changes that we recommended in our initial review. As a whole, changes wide-ranging. The changes are fairly wide-ranging that are proposed by the legislation, but a number of them are positive for our operations and finance. The challenge for staff, as well as certainly for council and our development community, is keeping track of the evolving legislative landscape. Not every change has been from the past few years has been fully implemented in time, and some of them have changed back. So our hope is that there is the ability to settle for a while and get everyone accustomed to the new process. So some of these impacts, as always, are difficult to really fully financially assess until some time passes, potentially until case law establishes some of these procedural items. And I think what we've realized is that every time there's a change that's proposed in legislation, there's a sort of procedural adaptation that communities make as well. So these things work themselves out in time. It does. The changes do highlight, of course, the need to be very thoughtful and strategic in our upcoming official plan work, and make sure that we really do take the opportunities available to us to work on that policy and really define our expectations for throughout the community. And staff will continue to update council as on the implications of this, as well as any other legislation that may unfold. So I'll pause there. This report was presented for council's information. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Great report, Carl. There's a lot of thought and effort gone into preparing that, and I'm going to support the staff recommendation.
I agree with Councillor Robinson. Great overview of the changes. Carl, are you aware if there's any dormant subdivision plans that we have on our books that have never been from the last 20 years?
That's a good question. I gave that some thought. I'm not aware of any plans that have current draft approval that are sitting about to lapse. There certainly was around the Wood Avenue area. There were some subdivisions there were plans of subdivisions that were approved and altered and reapproved over over the years, starting in the 1980s. However, with that, that should be coming to a close with Maple Ridge subdivision. There were other subdivisions that were certainly proposed over time, but I'm not aware of anyone that has draft approval that's essentially sitting stale. I know there are some in other communities. I'm not aware of ones here that would be affected by that change.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, it's really good planning work. I guess my question would be is your big project and your baby, the official plans were coming forward, and with these changes you mentioned a couple of times in the report that the effect of the changes are maybe slow to evaluate. So I guess my question is that going to make some of the work of the official plan kind of a shot in the dark as we try to figure out how this bill is going to affect everything else?
That's a fair question, Mr. Chair. I think some of the unknowns, some of the implications relate to certainly some of the procedural changes as it relates to appeals and how that unfolds. If we're looking, say, at somebody who objects to a zoning or official plan amendment goes to Superior Court, if they find a gap in a notice or some sort of technicality in that, if that replaces the work that the LPAT did. So I think those procedural things would be broadly outside the work that the official plan did. I think with respect to sort of the long range and growth planning proposals that were changed in the PPS, I think where there's a little bit of uncertainty is how much control council will still have. Like there's nothing in the PPS that prevents us from exceeding the base requirements and doing good planning. However, if it's contested, if there's an appeal either now or somewhere down the line, then depending on how the appeal rates evolve, that may introduce a little bit of uncertainty into the overall process. I did discuss the proposed PPS with our with the consultants that council just hired for the OP, and they saw it the same that I did, that the new PPS is not looking to fundamentally alter the sort of the work plan and the process that's been that we've worked along through now. I think a change that did happen is we invested in that land need study that defined and sort of set us on the path to undertaking that comprehensive review, and the change to the proposed PPS just when we were essentially done the land need study. I think it sort of affected the need for that, but I think it didn't affect the planning merits and still undertaking that long range growth planning, which is still, whether or not it's required by the PPS, is still a good thing to do. So I don't see anything in here that prohibits us or precludes us from making the right decisions and protecting what's important to protect through the OP work.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Thanks for that, Carl. Okay, so we did add a priority issue during director's report. So C.O. Morris we're looking for suggestions for delegations at April.
So perhaps to catalyze the discussion, one of the areas I would suggest we consider is that back at the Roma conference in January, we made 3 delegations at the conference and then 1 later. Happy to say that the Connecting Link delegation resulted in, I would like to think, an approval of just over $500,000, so I think that was a success. But there was one that we made with the Ministry of Health that ended up being the Associate Minister. And I think in the end, we probably want to recalibrate that discussion and bring it forward to the Associate Minister of Mental Health and Addiction, Minister Paul. So that's one I would suggest we pursue. I think we've done a lot of the work. I think we just need to present it to a different audience, perhaps, in consultation with other partners. Those other partners could be the 2 counties on either side of us, as a suggestion. So that's one I would highly recommend that we pursue.
Councilor McKenna?
Yeah, I'd support that one as well, and given that there's only a week or so, and the amount of work that has to go into it, we don't have to have 3 or 4, so if we have one, unless there's a burning, because on the capital side, we're pursuing, other than the lobby, that would be the only purpose to go in for future grants, and they're gonna say, well, have you applied for this? Because we have. So I'm not looking to fill the CO's time in the next week.
No. I'll jump in, and I really feel strongly about the infrastructure side because, in my background, I went to numerous Roma conferences and about the 20 of Highway 7 and municipalities were like, well, we've gone here so many times about it, and we were like, if you don't keep asking, then you've got to keep it on the table. So I think that's a really important one, and I don't know if the Eastern Ontario mayors are going to be doing anything about it, because I've been reading a lot about, especially down in the Quinte area, about them talking about, their challenges with a small municipality, and the infrastructure budget is unattainable. So I'm not sure if Eastern Ontario is taking a united role on that, but I really feel strongly about if you don't say anything, then there's no problem. Well, there is.
Yeah, on that one again, we don't know yet. Eastern Ontario West Caucus will be meeting, we actually passed this deadline, but Jerry's pretty good at getting a delegation, that's the ICU delegation. But they'll be discussing at this meeting.
Yeah.
I know in the past it's been a subject probably at virtually every meeting over multiple years. We're all facing some challenges.
Yeah.
I think if we look at our fund application for the big trunk line upgrades, I think that one is already in the process, and I guess we hope to have an answer by the time the conference rolls around. So that would be appropriate to seeking any further advocacy for that. But I think Councilor Boyer also had something.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the topic of infrastructure, will our enabling housing grant be decided before AMO, or will that still be in the hopper? Just thinking that'd be a good one to meet with the Minister Calandra for.
Yeah, it's expected, the announcement is expected before August.
And then through the chair, my only other one would be the impact updates, to try to lobby to get that updated because it is affecting our residents.
I would agree with you as well, and again, that's something with a group of municipalities, a united voice on that, because I think everybody agrees with the impact needs to be updated.
Two comments. One, impact is on the radar of the mayor's caucus, so I think that may be a more influential group to carry that message forward. It's probably on the radar of a lot of municipalities, but particularly the mayor's group. The other comment is Councilor McKenna mentioned during the beginning of this discussion that do we track these things? So good question. A short 2 weeks ago, you may recall that Family Services of Lanark-Kings Grenville came as a delegation, and we're looking for advocacy support for what's largely believed to be deficiency in funding. That would be one potential topic. My advice on that one is we should, if council is inclined, pass the resolution first before making a delegation. It just provides a little more credibility when you do make a delegation.
And I think that they suggested one correct to us. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, thank you. And I fully support doing the resolution and advocating for that. And just going back to Minister Tibolo, there have been a number of letters that have gone to him about youth mental health as well. And I'm just trying to remember the Roma delegation and whether we covered youth mental health or just adult mental health. But maybe we could look back on that report and ensure that it covers the whole population. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think your suggestion is supported for sure, and Yeah, Councilor Bennett?
Yeah, I'm all for advocating for infrastructure.
Yeah.
Just wanted it to be something, you can't just say we want more infrastructure. It had to be specific. You know,
Yeah.
well, otherwise they'll say,
Right. I think if it's dealt with at the Eastern Ontario Mayor's level, that's
I'm
it.
sure we'll have a discussion on that.
Yeah,
Actually.
and then if you're, whoever's at Angle, talk to people. Like I plan to do it at SEM, so, because once you start to talk to different municipalities and stuff, then you get an idea, you know, you're not alone and that kind of thing, so. So that one for sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. No committee board and external organization updates. We have one letter from the Toronto Zoo. Oh, sorry. Yeah,
Can I
sorry.
give a quick one?
Yeah, sure.
Just that the Heritage Conservation District study is taking place at the Welcome Center May 30th, Thursday from 5 to 7 p.m. So hoping to get a good turnout for that, and the consultants will be in town and be able to answer people's questions and help describe the scope. So we had a really good presentation at our last Municipal Heritage Committee meeting last Thursday, and this Thursday will be the public meeting, first public meeting.
Okay. Sorry for skipping through that one. Any other updates? No. So we do have one correspondence from the Toronto Zoo, coincidentally, about wild animals, and they're asking for support. Should we bring that forward at a future CAL to discuss if we're going to support the request, or do we want to pass it like that? Councilor Moore?
Does staff have a take on it from a bylaw perspective? Or?
Through the chair, I would say non-native animals have not been a consumer of our time historically. So it's not high on our radar. But the reality is Ontario is not regulated. There is no regulation. You can have a boa constrictor, you can have a tarantula. And the issue is that if we have to catch that tarantula and do something with it, that becomes a difficult situation. We've not had that situation in my time here, at least.
But you never know.
Well,
Yeah, I suspect we're in our community now.
Yes.
We just so far haven't been an issue, and I don't see any downside to adding a voice to this cause. At some point in time, we'll probably stare us in the face. Hopefully not literally, but
Okay. So, I can't think of a pun, but anyway, can we put this on a future council agenda for, go ahead and do a resolution, as I suggested? Okay. Oh, no notice of motions. I have a recommended motion for adjournment. The community adjourns proceedings at 6:16 p.m. and so adjourned until the next duly called committee meeting. Moved by Councilor Robinson, second by Councilor Dwyer. All in favor?
I was going to say something about that. Pennies are getting pretty out of hand on Saturday, but
This week?
I didn't bother because I honestly didn't think it'd take this
you never know.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
People get,
Yeah, no wager this week. I got up here too late.
tarantulas.
Yeah, you threw me off.
Sorry, it was my bad.
You gotta get out here before 5.
I was talking. I know that's hard to believe, but I was visiting.